Hello, and welcome to the video covering the current strategic plan for the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. This strategic plan ultimately is for 2024 to 2028. We did have two listening sessions during both July and August. During these listening sessions, we got some feedback from faculty, from staff, and from students. You'll notice in this video, I'll also talk about the AIU statements that are currently existing right now that are recommended for our syllabi. It is recommended that each faculty select one of these options. It's also recommended that you work with your department. If you have multiple department members, I know some departments only have one person. If that is the case, to work with your chair or your dean, but definitely making sure we keep some of those courses consistent. Like for English 101, for instance, all English 101 courses should have the same general choice for the statement they're using, right? If one person's using one, we should all use one. And I promise you, at the point that this is being recorded, by all means, our department definitely had conversations about it. But in going through all of this, we did make sure we got student feedback in addition to faculty and staff, because ultimately students are going to be the ones on the receiving end of these AIU statements. So we felt that it was very important to have them as part of our conversation. So there's going to be a lot that I go over in this video. I am going to make our document here a little larger to make sure that you can see it. If at any point you have questions, comments, concerns, anxieties, by all means, you can let me know. I'm Morgan, by the way, in case you have not met me. If you're new or you missed our session during in-service, August of 2024, I'm an English professor here on campus. I'm also, as of making this video, the interim director of our CETL. So I want to make sure everybody gets the information that they need, which is why I'm re-recording this version instead. We do have a recording of one of the listening sessions, but I want to make sure the audio is crisp and clear and that the document stays right here on the page. So let's go ahead and talk about what our strategic plan is and how it was created. So this strategic plan ultimately outlines the goals and objectives for the Mount West Center for Teaching and Excellence for the next 4 years. One thing that we really emphasized during in-service was that the first year is foundational. You'll see it's referred to as a building year or like the building phase in this document itself. Years 2, 3, and 4 are still a little bit more flexible, becoming more and more flexible as we get closer and closer to years 3 and 4, meaning that if you've got ideas, things that you think would be helpful for the CETL, by all means, shoot me an email, let somebody on the team know, because this is not something that is beyond year 1 set in stone, right? We do have a month-by-month calendar for how we want everything in year 1 to slowly unfold, but years 2, 3, and 4 still more flexible, a little bit more like Jello than that first year. So during the summer of 2024, the month of June, there was a CETL steering committee that was ultimately presented with the task of putting together a strategic plan, a series of goals for our CETL as it is established, working to put together what would eventually become the online and physical library. The physical library we've actually started building. I can show you a little bit of that later on in the video. And then, of course, thinking about AIU's recommendation statements. So we had some hefty things to go over, and I do want to emphasize that it was a team effort. So there's my name here, but Josh Keck and Megan Valentine were also part of this committee and did incredible amounts of work on this project. We were all working together to make sure to put everything that we possibly could into this thing for the college, and we had some really great guidance from Sarah Dick and Mike McComas as well. So definitely had some excellent support from our higher ups too. So here was our approach to this CETL strategic plan, and I am going to read some of it. I'm hoping it doesn't sound like a teacher reading a syllabus directly to students, but I do want to make sure you get all of the crucial information that you need. So we have chosen to establish annual strategic goals for the CETL over the next 4 years. One reason for this time frame is to ensure alignment with the existing Mount West 2023 to 2028 strategic plan, which will be discussed in the next section. So it's probable that you've already seen the strat plan for Mount West in general. If not, I'm not going to touch on it too in depth in this video, but on the next page, you are going to see how we are aligned with that strategic plan. So making sure that we weren't totally going off the rails and instead are providing information, or goals rather, that are directly pertaining to what Mount West wants to do going forward. So we have decided to include resources and recommendations and what we think would facilitate a successful startup for this CETL by outlining the following. Number 1, Roles and responsibilities of the CETL director or co-directors, a skeleton outline for the CETL operations manual that details the center's procedures and workflows, an outline / sitemap for the CETL web pages. What that means in terms of sitemap or outline is what tabs are you going to see when you eventually go to this website that is set to, hopefully, as a prototype, launch May of 2025. So should we have a section for Blackboard tutorials? Yes, absolutely. Should we have a section for AI resources? For sure. High impact practices or best practices or notes from conferences or upcoming events. That's the kind of stuff that I mean when I say sitemap. A list of programming priorities, so what things are kind of at the forefront of our minds whenever we're putting together our CETL offerings. A faculty needs assessment survey, so that is a huge part of that as well, not just thinking about our overall institutional goals, but also what faculty and staff want to see on campus as well. We want to make sure that voice or those voices are consistently heard. And then guidance and syllabus recommendations for AI use. So let's go ahead and talk about how these overlap with our Mount West plan. Now, if you are getting this video directly from me, it's entirely possible that I sent you the digital copy of our listening session, which means that you are going to have this document that has hyperlinks in it. So our strategic plan will be right there. For now, though, I really just want to talk about how we are aligned with the CETL plan in terms of, overarching goals, things that we really want Mount West to be able to achieve in the next few years. So below we outline how the CETL strategic plan aligns with Mount West strategic plan or priority number 4, growth-minded organizational and employee development, and more specifically, goal number 1, develop a streamlined and transparent professional development system. There are several ways in which we're going to do this, right? Tactic number 1, identify steps needed to create a streamlined and transparent professional development system. So our CETL director, for now, that's me, will use the new faculty calendar to schedule CETL offerings, as well as communicate with faculty and staff through various communication methods. We currently have a draft for a newsletter. I have put in a ticket to go ahead and get a CETL email ready to go so that any CETL emails would go directly to me, not just to my own account under my name, but also to a CETL email specifically, especially since I'm not going to be the only one that's ever working with the CETL. It's a big team. It's going to take a village. So we have that. And then I have something else in the works in addition to the television screens and things of that nature. So we're going to have lots of different ways in which we can communicate both online and in person to faculty and to staff. Tactic number 2, establish a center for excellence in teaching and learning. So yeah, absolutely. We're working on that. As of right now, the foundation is there. The dirt has been laid, we might say. We're going to continue building on that, especially over the course of this first year. Tactic number 3, CETL offerings are informed by data and illustrate a cohesive, systematic approach to professional development aligned with institutional priorities. So it's really where that needs assessment survey comes in. Again, we can't just say, oh, we're going to do X workshop, right? And it not benefit at least 25-30% of what's going on campus, which isn't to say that we can't have very niche workshops for individual departments. Absolutely, we should. But we want to make sure that that's not the consistent kind of workshop we're offering. We want to make sure that we are offering things like assessment, rubric building, whether or not your class is really aligning with our Gen Ed outcomes, if your class is ultimately designated as Gen Ed, making sure that we're getting general information out there, and also keeping in mind advanced technology integration and things of that nature. So making sure these workshops aren't for 2 people, but are instead for 20 or 30. And a lot of that's going to come from faculty and staff giving their opinions on how this works. So as of this video being recorded, that needs assessment is going to be released the second week of the academic semester. So not the first week, we're all busy, we're submitting syllabi, but that next week. And I'm going to be annoying about it. I am going to promote it as much as I possibly can in as many ways as possible. So definitely be on the lookout for that if you are watching this before that happens. If not, and you have not had the opportunity to share your thoughts, once the CETL website goes live, we are going to have a place on the site where you can recommend workshops or request assistance. In the meantime, though, if we are kind of in that in-between before the site, but after the survey has initially been submitted or sent out to faculty, you can shoot me an email, byrne@mctc.edu, or hopefully the CETL email as well, or you can come by my office in room 317. I'm definitely happy to work with you. I just really want to emphasize how important it is to get data directly from faculty and staff. And again, I really want to emphasize staff in particular too. And then tactic number 4, establish a cohesive new faculty orientation that includes a focus on teaching and learning. So as of recording this video, I actually did a half-hour session with our new faculty during their orientation. So I went over some best practices, talked about high impact practices, making moments that matter, assessing early and often, a lot of things that we've heard about before in orientation, but also covered some general things and recommendations that would be applicable and actionable in a classroom, as opposed to just overarching ideas or concepts that sometimes are so abstract or vague, we don't really see what an action item for that might look like. So going over a lot of that minutia, getting into things a little bit more in detail, but also letting them know what the CETL is, how it was formed, and getting them up to speed, getting them where everyone else was before we had our in-depth discussion, this discussion I'm recording now, for the entirety of the faculty. Here you'll find our mission statement and our vision statement, so I'm going to go ahead and just read both. So our mission statement is as follows. The Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning supports all faculty as they cultivate inclusive, evidence-based, student-centered teaching and learning practices. And our vision statement is as follows. The Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, the CETL, at Mount West Community and Technical College will create a dynamic and inclusive academic environment where faculty are empowered to excel in teaching, innovate in pedagogy, and foster student success. Our vision is to be a hub of professional growth and scholarly excellence, promoting an atmosphere of academic success. Through evidence-based practices, we strive to support learning outcome-centered approaches, cultivate professionalism and scholarship, enhance student learning assessment, and champion student-centered teaching and learning strategies. By nurturing a community of committed educators, the CETL aims to elevate the educational experience for all students, ensuring their success in an ever-evolving academic landscape. Which is lofty and exciting and generally awesome. Not anything I think anybody would object to, but we want to make sure we're talking about what that looks like, especially over the next 4 years. Again, keeping in mind years 2 through 4, kind of like Jello, we're flexible, but this first year, really wanting to make sure we get boots on the ground as quickly and efficiently as possible. So, in order to make this happen, let's talk about these next 4 years. So like I mentioned, year number 1 going to be our building phase. Goal number 1 is to establish the CETL leadership. So appointing a part-time CETL director, as of recording this, that is me, to lead the center's initiatives and strategic direction. Again, to reiterate, my name is Morgan Byrne, English professor, Office 317, if you need any assistance at all. And then creating and approving a comprehensive operations manual detailing the center's procedures and workflows. So I do have a month-by-month calendar of what the CETL is going to be working on this academic year, not just including workshops, but also including opportunities to revise and resubmit the operations manual to make sure it's getting the time and dedication and feedback that it needs. So if you've got ideas about that, especially after I talk about some stuff later on, by all means, again, let me know. You're going to hear me say that a lot. I really want to hear feedback as much as possible, but we do have a plan for putting that together. Goal number 2, develop an online presence and communication plan. So begin the development of the CETL website, which again, aiming to have that prototype ready by May of 2025. We are piloting a newsletter, which you'll see hyperlinked later on in this document, and then introducing the CETL and the strategic plan during August in service, which did happen yesterday. But of course, we also have this version as well for posterity's sake, or if anybody missed it, or you just want to go back and review everything that we said. I was told after my presentation that I have Gilmore Girls energy. I've never really seen it, so I don't quite know what that means, but apparently it means I do occasionally talk quickly. So if you need to slow me down at one point, if you're watching this because I talked really fast, for that I apologize. Goal number 3, launch initial course design workshops. So the goal is to offer at least 2 pilot workshops, aiming to engage at least 20% of faculty and staff. Now, I have the too much gene. I would love to have more than that, right? I think having a workshop a month would be awesome, but especially for something like this, when we are building, we are going to take the restaurant approach when they're really busy and people ask how long a wait is going to be, and that is to underpromise and overdeliver. And that is in a restaurant saying something like, oh yeah, it's going to be like an hour wait, but it's more like 45 minutes. For this, we're going to say we're going to pilot 2 workshops. It could end up being 4 or 5 in this academic year, but we're going to underpromise and overdeliver, because I think that's going to get us into a nice position to continue building, especially based on that faculty needs assessment survey, which, like I mentioned, will go out in the second week of the academic semester, this fall semester. But if you miss it, if you want to provide feedback, I'm always happy to hear it. Goal number 4, assist chairs with new faculty orientation. So like I mentioned earlier, have already done that. And that included developing comprehensive orientation materials, including a checklist for chairs or a dean, to make sure that new faculty are getting what they need. And that means answering questions like, what the heck is faculty council? What the heck is a PPA? And how do I make sure that I'm able to put or get the PD that I need? How do I handle PD? All of those things that are just a normal part of life for those of us who've worked here for a while, but might be a little overwhelming for new faculty. So having a checklist to go through all of that information, and then facilitating mentoring relationships between new faculty members and experienced colleagues or department chairs to provide ongoing guidance, support, and professional development opportunities. So for example, as part of the English department, we've just hired somebody new, and I was appointed his mentor. So we're going to be working together and especially checking to make sure that we are able to kind of build that mentoring relationship into something that will have eventual guidelines. So more on that in year 2, expansion and development. So goal number 1, securing a physical space. I mentioned during the in-person, in-service session that we've got ideas as to where this physical space could be. In fact, it's entirely possible we end up with at least a temporary physical space in like the next 3 months. But hopefully we will have a dedicated permanent physical space for the CETL on campus during year 2. We also want to make sure that we're able to secure any kind of budget planning, so requesting dedicated funding from the administration and developing a detailed 3-year budget outlining for projected expenses, funding sources, etc. So making sure we're not just burning money, but also that if we have money, we are using it in a way that makes sense for faculty and staff. Goal number 2, expanding CETL staff and programming. Hire a co-director or part-time training coordinator to support the growing activities in online resource development. We are going to continue to build and build and build our online and physical resources, but especially those online resources. Number 2, develop and offer 1 workshop each month. Again, I'm thinking, because I have the too much gene, we can get that done in year 1 in the spring semester, but at the very least, for year 2, that will be an expectation. We also want to make sure to emphasize that we're going to be using feedback from year 1 to identify any priority topics, but we'll also be using any feedback to help make those sessions better and to have ways in which we can assess those sessions, both in terms of whether or not you feel you're able to meet the outcome of that workshop by the end, not the students, but like you, the attendee. But also making sure that like they're being facilitated in a way that works and the resources are readily available and everything else that would go into making a workshop or a presentation or anything of the sort a success. Goal number 3, develop comprehensive library. Create and launch our online resource library featuring at least 20 resources like tutorials, templates, and best practices, and then creating our physical resource library, which we have started on, and I'm going to send you or show you a QR code for that in a moment, but if you've got an email from me including this video, I'm also going to just send you our current catalog as well. We've got a good chunk of stuff. It includes titles and authors for each text, as well as the publisher blurb about what the book is or does. So you've got a lot of good context there. Goal number 4, expand orientation resources to adjunct faculty orientation. So taking a lot of those orientation materials that we're already working on and bringing them to adjunct faculty, as well as things that are specific to adjuncts. And that does also include providing online orientation, any online learning modules, webinars, and in-person sessions. There's been a lot of conversations about implementing online orientations for students, and we want to make sure that we're able to do that for faculty as well, because sometimes you're not able to be there. Right? It's entirely possible you're watching this video because you couldn't be there for in-service. So we want to make sure this stuff is available consistently to make sure everybody is always up to speed. And then goal 5, implement peer review instructional observation programs. So I mentioned those mentorship guidelines earlier. We do have 2 example rubrics that are linked here, but ultimately our peer institutions, most institutions in general, have some kind of program wherein which you in your department and a peer, if you're in a department that has multiple people, likely going to be somebody from your department. If not, somebody from a similar discipline or in your division, you'll pair up, you will go to their class and provide feedback. They will go to your class and provide feedback. We did stress during in-service, this is not something that can get you fired. In fact, it looks good on your PPA because you participated and you get feedback consistently based on a rubric that's going to be agreed upon by a larger team. But we do want to make sure, especially with HLC coming in, I believe 2027, a huge part of that is building this mentorship program. So making sure that we are getting some kind of teaching evaluation, not just from students, but from peers as well, which is not something that should be seen as scary or anything that could get anyone in trouble. I've had plenty of evaluations where I was working with a rock star class and like something has gone wrong. And it happens. It's normal, but we do want to make sure that we are able to assess these classes. And we also want people to keep in mind that you would be choosing which class is assessed and what day it's happening and what time. So you can pick your best class, your best activity that you've done for like 2 years, and you would know like a week or two in advance when this person was coming because you would schedule this way early in the semester. So it would not be a surprise. It would not be entirely random. And this would be working with somebody in your division at the very least who could provide solid feedback to you based on a rubric. So definitely something we really want to work on integrating as we get closer and closer to that HLC visit and as we continue to build the CETL.
Right, now getting into year 3, which is our enhancement and engagement year, and that is going to begin with implementing a communication and marketing strategy. So something a little bit beefier than what we're doing at the collegiate level, and maybe extending a little bit further out into the community. And we're going to start by developing and executing a comprehensive communication and marketing plan aiming to increase faculty engagement through newsletters and faculty meetings. Now, in the digital version, there is a hyperlink to an example newsletter. You'll note here it says room ? Because as of recording this, we don't have one yet. But again, there are ideas. We should have one soon. Goal number 2, broaden scope with advanced workshops. So introduce at least 4 advanced level workshops covering topics such as advanced pedagogy, educational technology integration, and innovative teaching methods to further enhance faculty skills. Goal number 3, establish impact assessment and feedback mechanisms. So we're not just going to be putting on workshop after workshop and not assessing those workshops. When you fill out a workshop proposal form, you do actually have to provide the outcome that the course or the workshop is designed to meet. So whatever it is, people should be able to do by the conclusion of that workshop. And we're going to be working together with the assessment committee and whatever other channels we need to make sure we're able to assess those workshops. If something is working, awesome, let's do more of it. If something is not working, let's fix it or let's remove it. Especially if that thing 3-4 years down the line, especially as technology changes, maybe that thing isn't relevant anymore, we should probably not have it. At least not have it as often offered. And then goal number 4, evaluate and refine orientation programs. So similar functioning here, right? We're collecting data and analyzing feedback on our workshops and, anything the CETL is doing in terms of its impact. We also want to do that for orientation programs. Your orientation, the first time you do it's not going to be perfect, right? We want to make sure that we are able to go back and assess what's working and what is not working. So being able to go back and revisit those and make sure they're moving at the speed at which they need to. And then finally, year number 4, which is maturity. So goal number 1 of that year 4, again, we're in the Jello phase at this point. Things are flexible. We want to establish formal partnership with Marshall's CETL, enabling resource sharing and collaborative projects that broaden our CETL's influence and access to diverse educational resources. At the time of recording this, I'm actually scheduled to meet with Marshall's CETL director tomorrow. So I'm working on that very quickly. We're going to get a head start on that part. Goal number 2, develop faculty development certification program. So introduce a structured certification program for faculty. So something that like if you participate in the mentorship program and you facilitate X workshop Y many times and you do X, Y, and Z, then you'll be able to be certified in teaching excellence. And we're looking to do that through Credly specifically. And then goal number 3, enhance technological integration. Things are going to continue to change. We want to make sure that we are using the most innovative, the most top of the line stuff in our classrooms to make sure that students are getting what they need. They're going to be using new and emerging technologies in the workforce, so they got to get it here too. But also to make sure that our classes remain engaging. Right? We need to incorporate new stuff. We got to be changing with the times. So those are our 4 blocks of the individual years that we've got mapped out so far. Now, after that, we have additional resources and recommendations, things that include the CETL director responsibilities, an outline of that operations manual, our outline / sitemap for our website, programming priorities, etc. I am going to go ahead and hit these very quickly because, again, I don't want to just read them to you, but I do want to hit the highlights. So as a CETL director or co-directors, they would be ultimately responsible for the following: providing planning for all instructional and curricular development activities designed to support the faculty's or the college's faculty community and staff. I really want to emphasize staff too. Support the scholarship of teaching and learning through research and dissemination of best practices. Foster collaboration between divisions to support effective teaching and student learning. Design, plan, and coordinate new faculty orientation for full-time and adjunct faculty. Workshops designed to improve the use of technology-enhanced teaching. Professional development opportunities that support high-impact teaching practices, accessibility, inclusion, and student-centeredness in course design. We will also be assisting with QM implementation, especially when it comes to rubric assessment for online and hybrid courses. We really want to get back to having faculty members who were certified to be, QM peer reviewers. So we're going to be working on that, utilizing that faculty calendar to keep everyone up to date, assisting faculty with implementing and assessing instructional methods and technologies, developing and maintaining that operations manual, more on that in a moment, maintaining our website, and then serving on committees and offering to provide constructive, not evaluative feedback when anyone needs it. So really just a very aggressive is not the right adjective, but a very prevalent support source for all faculty and staff, really trying to make sure everybody's getting what they need. This operations manual, like I mentioned a bit ago, is something that we, in terms of its conception to its writing, going through multiple stages of revisions and feedback, we do have a plan to hopefully have a final draft of it by May of 2025. So what ultimately this is going to include will be the following. So your table of contents for the operations manual would look like this: an introduction, which would include the purpose for the manual, so why does it exist, the history of the CETL, our mission statement, and then an overview of the current structure and leadership. And then next, governance and leadership. So the roles and responsibilities of a part-time CETL director or directors. If somebody is going to be stepping into this role, they need to know what to expect. Composition and function of a CETL advisory board. So the team that is supporting the CETL, whatever that team looks like, where are they coming from? What are their roles and responsibilities? And then the decision-making process. The CETL director cannot just say, we're going to do this, and then that thing happens. Or rather, it doesn't just become a campus-wide rule, right? We have a decision-making process, and people need to know where they should report and what that structure looks like. Next are policies for faculty release time. So full transparency here, I have 6 release hours working as our interim director here. Faculty participation and engagement policies, confidentiality and data protection. If you've, as the CETL director, you end up with a whole bunch of data about teaching evaluations, probably shouldn't be sharing that with other people, right? But other information as well pertaining to confidentiality. Equity and inclusion policies. Next are our procedures for things like program development and approval, so proposal submission guidelines and review and approval of workflow, workshop and event planning, so proposing that workshop and what that looks like, planning events and workshops and how you schedule, how you promote, so basically a step-by-step guideline for how to handle all of this stuff if you are part of this team. Resource allocation, where's it coming from? What does your budget look like? How do you get things approved? Our faculty development programs, descriptions of previous workshops, seminars, and training sessions, how you register and participate in any of these procedures, and then our evaluation and feedback mechanisms. So how do you evaluate these workshops? How do you get feedback from attendees? Awards and recognition, so distinguished faculty, and then faculty credentialing programs, again, thinking about that teaching excellence program that I was mentioning earlier. Our online resources, so how we develop that content, how we approve what goes up and what comes down, website maintenance, and then accessibility. Next is communication and marketing. So that's an entirely different section of Mount West, right? Who should you be in contact with? What does it need to look like? At this point of recording this, we're working with Bullseye. So what's the template for how we ultimately market what we put out? assessment and evaluation, so metrics and methods for evaluating any of our programs, data collection, and then reporting and continuous improvements. And then finally, we have appendices with program proposal forms and workshop feedback, etc. in the back, including a glossary if anybody's entirely new. So that is a rough outline of what would be included in the CETL operations manual. Next is our website outline or sitemap. I do want to reiterate one thing I've said several times. If you have questions about anything I've said, please shoot me an email. Please let me know. I'm happy to talk all things CETL all the time. So we are envisioning, when the prototype launches in May of 2025, having a homepage that includes the following: a mission statement, a vision statement, both of which I mentioned earlier, contact info for the current CETL team, a calendar with links to events and upcoming workshops, a help request form for faculty and staff to request assistance or resources, a site tutorial, so a short video welcoming new faculty to the site and talking about how it works, and then our current newsletter for that month. In our About section, we intend to include, again, our mission and vision statements, but also our goals and priorities as a CETL, so elaborating on those a little bit. A link to our strategic plan, our history and rationale, so where'd we come from, our purpose, why it's here in the first place, CETL leadership, bios, and contact info for the CETL team, including hours of operation and our location, any CETL advisory board members, any annual reports associated with the CETL, and then committee reports, so advisory meeting minutes, if anybody needs to access those. Next, we have events. So in our events section, we would have a list of any upcoming workshops with descriptions, dates, and registration links. Recordings of trainings, so having something like this, right, a recording of something important that happened on campus is something we would want to make sure that we had, not just one or two, but an entire library of recorded trainings. Submitting a workshop proposal, so you could do that under the events tab, and our example form for that would be right here. Our facilitator guide, if you're going to facilitate a workshop, if you're going to be hosting something, you should know how to do it, right? So providing some tips for how to handle that, and we hope to do full workshops on that in the coming year or two. A section dedicated to professional development. So there's your conferences, your in-service schedules. If you have notes that you took or any information that was gathered during a conference and you want to share it, you could do that here, and then information about QM trainings. Next, we would have resources. That's our resource library, our AI use policy statements, information about assessment, course design, online and hybrid teaching, and then our technology tutorials. Finally, we have information for new faculty, including orientation and those mentorship programs, and then a Contact Us section, which would include our faculty needs survey. Now, in this section about resources, I do want to note that this is the document that includes all of our available CETL resources. So everything is listed in alphabetical order by title. And if you're borrowing something, we'll have a borrowing form in our office. So as you can see, we've got 5 pages of stuff. And again, if you're getting this video from me, you're also getting this document. But this is available in my office. As of right now, I'm recording this, the books are in my office too, but they won't be here forever. They'll be in our physical space eventually. But if you want to check out any of these books as of the time of recording this, just come by my office and see me. But eventually, we will have a full form that you'll use to check books out, kind of like a little library. And I highly encourage you to check these out. And if there are other texts you think we should have, by all means, let the CETL know. We definitely want to make sure that we have that. Okay, so our programming priorities, right? We talked about the needs assessment survey. We want to make sure that faculty and staff are really able to contribute and talk about what they want to see. But there are some overarching concepts or priorities that we have that we really want to make sure come through in the workshops that we are offering. So the first one is promoting an atmosphere of academic success and growth. That means monthly workshops eventually. And again, I have the too much gene. I'd like to see that happening by spring of 2025, but we'll see. Continuing to work with new faculty orientation, making it better and better, having those mentorship programs, and then faculty development days, which would be organized a biannual development day focused on innovative teaching methods, curriculum design, and educational research. Number 2, dignity, respect, and belonging. That means inclusive teaching practices, cultural competency training, and community building events. I would also posit that we're going to be doing some critical thinking stuff as well. We've had some conversations about critical thinking and its relation to the Gen Ed rubric and whether or not certain assignments meet those critical thinking requirements or what it means to critically think, and I'd like to see more of that happening on campus as well. Number 3, learning outcomes centered practices. That means workshops pertaining to learning outcomes, curriculum mapping, rubric development. One of the books available in our CETL right now is an introduction to rubrics. Blackboard, especially Ultra, has some really cool rubric stuff as well. So we'll provide all of the assistance that you could need in developing a rubric. And then our peer review of teaching. Again, you're going to see that a lot, right? Building those mentor relationships, building those peer-to-peer relationships by providing reviews of each other. Really want to make sure we're emphasizing that, especially in preparation for CETL coming in 2027. Number 4, professionalism and scholarship. So research and scholarship support. One thing that we're currently working with right now is what's referred to as the Mount West Writing Roundtable. Once we have a consensus from our time survey, we are going to provide a bi-weekly meeting of like an hour and a half where faculty and staff meet to collectively kind of hold each other accountable to get their work done for writing a research paper or applying to a conference and putting together a presentation or writing creative work. And it's not a formal workshop by any means. You can request feedback if you want it, but it really is designed to just be a supportive space for faculty and staff to come together and work on their professionalism, their scholarship, their creative work. And if they want feedback, fine. If they want to just work in silence with their peers, they can. Next is the Distinguished Faculty Awards, professional development grants, and then of course our academic writing group, like I just mentioned. Number 5, student learning assessment. So having those assessment workshops, being able to write a successful assessment report, being able to utilize the data from an assessment report, and then any kind of support needed for the accreditation process. Next is student-centered teaching and learning strategies. So active learning techniques. So being able to incorporate things like collaborative learning, problem-based learning, or flipped classrooms, student engagement, universal design for learning, and then feedback and assessment. So training faculty on providing timely and constructive feedback that supports student learning and improvement. And then getting into technology and system operations. So Blackboard training, technology integration, QM, a lot of the stuff that we've had already, but wanting to make sure that we're adding more to it, giving people really, what they need. Now, in terms of our faculty needs assessment, I've mentioned this a couple times. This is where you provide feedback on what it is you want to see on campus. And since it's a video and I'm in my office, I can just show it to you. We had a lot going on in in-service, so I told anybody if they wanted to see it before it was released, by all means, I'd show them. But this is that document. Again, it has not released yet. It will come out. It'll be released to everybody September of 2024. We're looking at the second week of the academic year. But these are going to be some questions that would be asked of you in this survey. So those are, number 1, briefly describe your teaching methods for your courses. You do not have to write an entire statement of teaching philosophy, but we do recommend that you give us an idea of what your class looks like. That way we can get an idea of who we're catering to. Number 2, at present, how likely are you to attend optional professional development opportunities hosted by the college? So if you say something like very likely, you're going to go right into what kinds of trainings would you like to see offered on campus or online. If you say unlikely or very unlikely, you're going to get what, if anything, would make you more inclined to attend optional professional development opportunities. So if you're not really feeling what's offered right now, the optional stuff, tell me why. What would make it more appealing to you, more helpful? There again, what kinds of trainings would you like to see offered on campus or online? And I'll make it bigger. So there we go. Nice and big so we can see it. Number 5, what would be your preferred time frame for PD opportunities? Mornings would be 8 to 11:30, afternoons noon to 4, or evenings 4:30 to 6. What resources, physical or digital, would be beneficial for your development as an educator? And then finally, as our CETL team moves forward, what would you like them to keep in mind? How can they best serve you and your needs? So that is going to be our faculty professional development survey that we are going to send out during that second week of the academic semester this fall 2024 to get, to feel everybody out, figure out what you guys want or need. And to say it for the millionth time, if you have something that you want to tell me about what we should have on campus, please come by my office. I'd be happy to go over that thing with you. Okay. Finally, we're going to talk about any guidance and syllabus recommendations for AI. Now, before I get into all of this, I'm really just going to go over what the individual options are. I do want to stress that faculty need to meet with their departments or their chair or their dean if you don't have a chair to talk about what statement you're using. So for example, I think earlier in this video I mentioned that English 101, we all use the same statement. I just came from another meeting where we talked about College 101. We are using the same statement, all of us. Everybody teaching College 101 is picking the same statement. So you do need to be, if you are somebody teaching the same class but different sections, all of the sections of English 101, College 101, English 102, what have you, need to be the same. So definitely make sure you're communicating with your departments. So let's go ahead and go through the options. Now, before we brought them to faculty and staff, we did run these by students to make sure they were understandable, and they were. Our student body president, one of our student ambassadors, some of our PTK officers, they all said, yep, the language absolutely makes sense. So we did run this by some folks who would be on the receiving end of these AI use statements. So here are some elements to consider when incorporating an AI use policy in a course. So you might consider providing an overview of the purpose of incorporating AI tools, define what constitutes an AI tool. We in the English department had some interesting discussions about Grammarly, especially because it used to be just a fix your error and then tell you why it's wrong, which is great. But it's not just that anymore, right? Now it's a little bit more. So now it's creating other issues. So defining what constitutes AI in the context of your course, specify when and how AI tools will be used, clearly outline any requirements for attributing AI. In fact, you're going to see some example citations here in a moment. Emphasize the importance of academic integrity and clarify that using AI tools in a manner that violates academic honesty policies will result in consequences. Number 6, notify students if plagiarism detection software is being utilized. Number 7, address any concerns related to data privacy and security when using AI tools. Ensure that AI tools used in class are accessible to all students. So, for instance, I've had students who don't have smartphones, right? If you were going to have it so that your students are using, Mid-Journey, they have to all be able to access it. Especially if it is a core part of a major assignment. If they can't all access it, maybe not the thing you want to do, because it needs to be accessible to all students, including those with disabilities, and you need to provide accommodations if they need them. Offer resources or support students who may need assistance in using them. Clarify that the instructor does reserve the right to modify or restrict the use of AI whenever it's deemed necessary. And then encourage students to provide feedback and remind students of their responsibility to comply with that use policy, whichever one that you picked. And there are 4 in total. Those are, number 1, prohibit all use of these tools. So, absolutely not. You're not using it in this class. For instance, I think accounting, the intro to accounting, English 101, I know in those classes, 101 or AI is a no-no. Number 2, allow their use only with prior permission. That's where we have a little bit more gray area, right? I know College 101 is using that statement. I know English 102 is using that statement. So definitely getting a little bit more into those gray areas. Number 3, allow their use only with explicit acknowledgement. And then number 4, freely allow their use. It's going largely unchecked, but because those classes are using programs that have generative fill and other things that they may not even know are AI to begin with, and how would they go about citing it? That's our rationale there. So let's go through each one individually, and then to reiterate, I really encourage you to talk to your department and find out what your individual sections are doing. But definitely make sure to include your own thoughts on the matter as well. It should be an open dialogue. Number 1, AI tools are fully prohibited. In this course, the use of artificial intelligence tools to generate or assist in producing academic work for submission is strictly prohibited. Students are not permitted to utilize any AI tools for completing assignments, projects, or assessments. Any use of AI tools to generate or assist in producing academic work is considered a violation of the course policies on academic integrity. The instructor may employ detection software to identify instances of plagiarism or unauthorized use of AI. The instructor can modify or change any aspect of the AI tool's usage policy at any time throughout the course. If students have any questions or concerns regarding the policy, they are encouraged to discuss them with the instructor for clarification. Now, there are going to be some sentences in there that you're going to see in the other policies as well, but from here, we move forward a little bit. So, in this course, the use of AI tools is permitted only with prior permission from the instructor. So, unless given permission to use those tools, each student is expected to complete assignments without substantive assistance from others, including automated tools. Any unpermitted use of AI tools to generate or assist in producing academic work is considered a violation of the course policies on academic integrity. The instructor may employ detection software, and then from here, we're seeing some similarities in the previous policy or the previous statement. Down here, you can see a sample for citations. So, when permitted to use AI, students must provide clear attribution, for any AI generated content produced or assist by these tools. For example, text generated using ChatGPT 3, I believe we're on 4 now, should include a citation such as, and we have a citation provided here. Students may be required to include a metacognitive reflection with their assignment submission. Now, keep in mind, we did have some discussion during in-service about the word metacognitive. Ultimately, this means like critical thinking. What prompt did you utilize to get this? How did it help you? Was it successful? Did it hinder you in any way? So a reflection, essentially. Just critically thinking about how you did it as opposed to just slapping some spaghetti on the wall and hoping that it worked. So that is ultimately what that means, but it may be removed from the final iterations before we go into selecting something for the syllabi because there was a discussion about that adjective there. Number 3, AI use tools with acknowledgement. So in this course, the use of artificial intelligence tools is permitted on all assignments if that use is properly documented. There again is how you properly document something like ChatGPT, for instance. If they're using a different kind of AI tool, you will need to provide a citation example, just like we do in like English 101 for APA, MLA, giving them example citations. You would want to do the same thing for this. And then, of course, the instructor can modify or change any aspect of this usage policy at any time. And then finally, AI tool usage with no acknowledgement. This is, in this class, you're freely permitted to use AI. You do not need any special documentation or citations, but you might still be required to include a reflection, especially if you're using a program that you know has something like Gemini, Copilot, etc. in it, and it's just kind of doing its thing, and you can't do anything about it. You can't track what it's doing. You might still provide a reflection on how it assisted you if it's giving you prompts or it's giving you responses. So even if you can't track all of it or you're using something like generative fill, you can still acknowledge that it exists and put together a reflection on that. And we have additional resources here. So that's a lot. It's a lot of information. I completely and totally understand. If you have questions, comments, concerns about anything pertaining to our strategic plan or AI use, again, I do recommend for AI use specifically, please talk to your chair. Please talk to your dean if you don't have a chair. But if you have questions about the CETL, again, my name is Morgan Byrne. I'm in Office 317. My email is byrne@mctc.edu. And since beginning this video, I have gotten the okay to get a CETL email, which should be CETL@mctc.edu. So really exciting things happening here on Mount West campus, and I can't wait to see the cool stuff that we get up to as a team. So if you need anything, by all means, let me know. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching this long video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.